All right. So I will share with us. I love collaboration and discussion. It adds to the energy and the benefit of this conversation. So at any point in time, raise your hand and add to it, comment, ask questions. I'm down for it all. I will tell you all this. I'm a little bit of a nerd. When I got into Iowa's data around, I'm okay with that, but when I got into Iowa's data around voter registration and things like that, I was floored. So I really can't wait to show you all some of the stuff. Some of it you may know, some of you may not. But I just think that Veronica's back. Yay. Welcome back, Veronica. It's funny because I've had people join calls for different states. We did 17 states total. I think this is like 14 that I've done the deep dives on so far. So we only have 3 more left. But there are people that have been joining different ones, which I love, because the more information that we have, the more we collaborate and connect together, the more powerful we can be as we go into this election cycle, which is really what we're all aiming for, right? So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and start this. Maybe. There we go. Awesome. Okay, so this is the top 100 rural counties for power building. So everybody asks all kinds of questions about this because I've had people say, what do you define as rural? And why is this on there? So let me just say this. It's not just about the county being a certain percentage of rural. It's about where do we have rural populations where we can make the most progress and where we can build power, right? So, and just because a county hasn't made the final list doesn't mean that it's not worth it. So I might have 10 counties selected, but only 7 made the list. All 10 are worth organizing in. It's just that maybe those 7 create specific power in a place, okay? So I just said all of this, it's on this, but it's a short-term piece of a long-term strategy. There were 17 states that ended up on this project. We are covering Iowa on this one. And so what I did is looked at, oh, where did it go? Oh, that's because my Zoom finished from the last one. Sorry. It finished converting. You know how it converts your Zoom? And it was like, ching. That was awkward. That'll be good on the replay, right? Let me see. Okay. So these are all of the places where I pulled data from. So if you can imagine, I literally pulled up the election results for all of these races. And here's what that process looked like. I then looked at state margins that had 10% or less, or swing states, battleground states. Then I pulled the counties that had margins of 10% or less for every single one of those elections. Then I cross-referenced the counties that kept showing up in those elections, right, to find the top or the repetitive the counties that kept showing up. And then it was time to look at the population and the percent rural. And then very last was to look for power building, which was common districts or seats. A lot of people approach it in reverse. They're like, ooh, who do we want out? We're not going to do that. We're going to let the data tell us where to go, right? So that we can get there and build power fastest, and know where we want to kind of implement things and put things together. So what does that look like? So in Iowa, y'all know, it's always been an important state in politics. We know a certain gentleman who's been there quite a lot recently. Every time I turn around, he's in Iowa. I don't know. I could wish he could get lost in like the Maquoketa Caves or something, but anyway, wishful thinking. But so educating and engaging the inactive registered voters from 2022, the Senate race. And if you cut the Republican lead that Grassley held the last time by 28.7%, would send a strong message that it could have ripple effects throughout the state and the country. That's actually possible. So we're looking at Muscatine, Des Moines, Scott, Jefferson counties, critical geographies that are in that first congressional district, okay? So here's the pretty version, and this is what you're going to get emailed. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because I'm going to send it to you and you're going to get to look at it yourself. I'm actually going to show you what I call the dirty data. It was all of my crunching the numbers that got me to this place, okay? I'm checking the chat real quick. All right, awesome. Okay, so I'm going to put a pin right here in this PDF, and then I'm going to show you the actual data. And here we go. Okay, so Iowa, I was so excited because look at all the different races these 6 counties can impact. It's the 2020, this is looking at the 2020 presidential race. So there was an 8% difference in that race. 138,672, 611 votes. That was the difference, this number right here. In these 5 counties, there were 64,103 registered voters that did not vote. That is 46% of that vote difference in just these 6 counties. If you look at the House District 1, that was a 7% difference. 20,774 votes was the voting difference. There were 68,731 registered voters that did not vote in that election. That's 330% of the votes needed. House District 2, it was an 8% difference. 26,241 votes. That was the difference. There were 8,277 registered voters not voting. That's 32%. That's a third of the vote difference. And your Senate result had a 12% difference. 148,000 people didn't vote. Vote difference. 42,551 did not vote that were already registered. Again, 29%, almost a third. So we're going to be looking at this data from a couple of different plays, right? We're going to be looking at the actual voter turnout. We're going to be looking at the number of people registered to vote. We're going to be looking at the people that voted other, right? And looking at what are the differences and where do we have opportunity to build power and make progress. So what that looks like, don't judge me. This is now the dirty data part, okay? This is the pretty version. Y'all got like the clean, gorgeous piece. This is the pretty version. This, my loves, is like where it all started. So Denise, it wasn't about doing a particular district. The way that it went about was looking at the data and having the data driven. So it's not, did I go to a district and look for it? I didn't go to any particular district. I let the data lead me to where the districts ended up. And so you'll see where the counties are that had the greatest ability to grow and build power for 2024. What we'll want to do is do this same thing again, this same work before we head into all the other ones, if that makes sense, right? And it doesn't mean that there's not anywhere to do work in the 3rd district. It doesn't mean that at all. It means these were the areas where we could make the greatest gains in the shortest amount of time going into 2023 and 2024 into this election cycle, okay? So this is the way that I started. So anything that is in light blue and light red is that 5% difference, right? And I started with the presidential and then went all the way through. And then it was about looking at the percent rural, the population, and the state population rank. You can see that with the exception of Scott, right, which is still really, really important, and it has a nice size rural population, everything else is 20 to 60% rural, okay? So that's a lot of people that will make an impact when it comes to actually voting. The number of counties that have, that in the presidential race had less than 5% were 2, less than 10% were 4, and total it was 6 counties that were less than 10% in the presidential race, 1 in the gubernatorial race, Senate, and so forth. Here's where I want you to look at your first, this is your spring 2023 registration data, because that's when I pulled your numbers last, okay? So populations, the people registered to vote, what percent of the population are registered to vote? For Iowa, for this list, it's anywhere from 50 to 76%. So what does that tell me? That tells me that voter registration is an issue. There's an area for opportunity. We want to see 70 to 80% of the population registered to vote at a minimum, right? So Scott County would be the only one that I would be like, okay, green light. So if I look at Scott, even though 76% of the people are registered to vote, only 52% voted in the presidential election. Half the people did not vote in the last presidential election that are registered to vote in Scott County. That should terrify people, right? Because think about how critical that race was. And the fact that half of the people that could have cast a ballot chose not to, that should be like, what in the absolute world, right? And then those numbers only get worse when you go into your gubernatorial races and when you go to your Senate races. You're talking about 30% to 50% of the people casting a ballot. Holy geez. 1 out of 3, half. So when you start to think about what does this data show me, it shows me that we have 2 areas of GOTV that fit for us. Now, this is not the case everywhere. So like some places, voter registration is like 70%. And I mean, like across the board, they're like 70, 75. I'm like, dang, y'all. But then their turnout numbers might be low, right? So for me, then there's a question about, and the strategy is, oh, we don't need a voter registration drive. We need a GOTV, like get out your door to go vote, right? And we need to figure out why this population is not engaged in voting. And what's scary is, think about how critical you guys are in our political landscape, and half of your state is not voting, right? When I look at your presidential votes, this column right here where it says other votes, I want to play a little game and let's look at Jefferson County, okay? Jefferson County, the Democratic vote was 4,319, Republicans was 4,443. There were 247 other votes. So there were 247 people in Jefferson County that couldn't get themselves to vote for either Biden or Trump, with everything that was on the line in 2020. Now, guess what would have happened had we won those votes? We would have won that county by 123 votes. So what this GOTV need right here is, if we win the other votes, how much more did we need on top of it to actually flip that, or close it or flip it? So you can see Winneshiek is super duper close as well, right? And you'll see this as we go all the way down, but I wanted to share it with you, like that's what that column means. And these are other votes. And I did this all the way through. So look how many you guys have close, can flip, close, can flip, close, can flip, because this is how close these counties are. Is anybody surprised by these numbers, or did you know? Did you know it already, or were you surprised?
Didn't know it already, but I'm not terribly surprised either.
Got it. Got it. So when I start to look at like what this looks like, especially when I get into 2020 and 2022, I go, so are there any trends? Do I see trends? And so sometimes what was interesting going through the data is I might see a county that was blue in a House race or a gubernatorial race that was then red in another one, right? Got it, Amy, got it. So what I have found is whenever you see a split vote on the same ticket, typically that vote is for an incumbent. So if you know that, what do you need to do to shift that vote? So if that vote is for an incumbent, then what you want to do is look at what their voting record is on the policies that are most current and most current issues for them, so that you can use that information going forward. Yeah, see, you guys are familiar. People, yep, they felt GOTV, yep. So this is about saying, okay, we see what the result is of the work that's been done over the last 4 years, or that hasn't been done, or that was done maybe not as effective as we would have liked. So how do we take this data and use it for 2024? So I want to show you, this is where it gets really, really interesting. And I'm going to cover up this last one until I get there. So these are your registered active and then inactive voters. So these were people who were active at some point that are inactive. So there's almost 80,000 available people that used to be involved in this democratic process who aren't any longer. Do they know they're not registered? Do they know they're inactive? How did they get kicked from the rolls? Those are the types of conversations that we want to be looking for, so that we know how to prioritize the way that we go about our campaigns and our initiatives. Now, in 2022, these were your numbers for registered voters in 2020 and 2022. You guys are losing voters. You've lost 17,000 voters between 2020 and 2022. That's 11%. How do y'all feel about losing 11% of your voters in 2 years?
Terrible.
Yeah, Candela, I know they have, right? I know there's an active campaign. Like I just worked the Stacey Abrams campaign. I can tell you, Kemp did everything possible in 2018 and 2022 to get people kicked off the rolls, right? Our Georgia laws impacted us because we couldn't register people to vote, right? Heck, they didn't want people to vote so bad in Georgia, we couldn't even give them water or food while they were in line, right? It was legally against the law last year in Georgia for us to give food and water. So the way we went around that was there were literally food trucks and stuff that came for free across the street away from the polling location. And they gave away free food, free coffee as people went to go. Yeah, like, but it shouldn't be that hard. That law was overturned for this go around, but it shouldn't be that hard. But what does that tell you? It tells you that they're scared of people voting because when we vote, when everybody votes, we win. That's just the truth. And when I say we, I don't mean just like the Democratic Party. I mean, people win, right? I had never worked a political campaign before last year. Never, ever. I was an issue girl, right? But Stacey made me want to work the campaign. And when she lost, I cried off and on for 3 days. And I have a pretty significant social media following. So I went live and I said, guys, I'm not crying because we quote unquote lost an election. I'm crying because there are 500,000 Georgians who aren't going to get access to healthcare. And they would have in 3 months, right? I'm crying because you know what I mean? And that's what it is. It's not about whether the candidate loses or wins. It's about, do the people of Iowa win or lose? And those are the conversations that we've got to start having. Now, when I look here, this is the trend for you all. So these are your registered voters, Dems in 2020, Dems in 2022, the loss and the gain compared to Republicans. You will have lost almost 17% of your Democratic voters, while the Republicans have lost only 5%. Seems a little intentional to me, right? But when I saw that, I was like, holy crap. And then your other voters that don't fall into any category, they're at over 17%. Wonder why that is. When I saw those numbers, I just was like, you've got to be kidding me. Even though I know, right? Even though I know that that's the intent. When you see the numbers for yourself, it makes it really, really challenging. So what are some examples of how you use this data? So let's just say I want to focus on Scott, Muscatine, and Des Moines because they had the greatest losses in terms of, wait, I'm lying, Marshall, in terms of Democratic voters, right? I can then go to philanthropic organizations. I can go to funders. I can go to those types of places and say, listen, in 2 years, we lost 20% of our Democratic voters. So we need funding for a strong voter registration drive. And this is what that looks like. And this is how many people it's going to take. And this is how we're going to do it. So you can actually lay out a plan that says, this is what we can accomplish. This is what it's going to take. And this is how much we're asking for, because this is how many bodies we want. This is how we're going to implement them. And this is how much we want to pay them per hour. Because that sounds a whole lot better than saying, hey, we need to do a voter registration drive. Can we have some money? Really? But if I say, hey, we lost 20% of our voters in these counties, and if I win this county, it's going to impact this race by this percent, or help impact this race by this percent, right? So that's one of the ways that you can use the data. So it's funding, it's strategy, whether like, let's just say, you know that you need help in voter registration, but you also need GOTV. You need to get people out to vote. So when I have my GOTV budget, when I'm looking at setting up the campaign and how much I want to allocate for what, then I might say, okay, I'm going to put 30% of my budget and my manpower into voter registration and 70% into getting out the vote. Right? You can use this data in so many ways to make progress happen in these counties. Okay, so I'm going to stop right there and open it up just for comments, questions, any of those types of things. Oh my God, Sue, a woman's place is in charge. I love that so much because, okay, totally, I'm going down a rabbit hole for just 2 seconds. So, and it's your fault because of your shirt. So I volunteer here. So I'm in Bristol, Tennessee / Bristol, Virginia. I volunteer at the Women's Health Clinic that's on the Virginia side of town. And because like most of the states around us have bans, we get people from everywhere. And we have protesters that come in. Last week, we had a guy who's on federal indictment for blocking access to a clinic. And there was about 20 of them, with 10 of them being children that they had out there. Like one was like 3 months old and some were teenagers or whatever. But so there's one guy with a real heavy accent and he's like, the Bible says that Jesus Christ, whatever he was saying. And I just said, the Bible says thou shalt not judge. And I'm louder than he is. And then he goes, the Bible says women should shut their mouth when men are speaking. And I was like, oh, bless your heart.
Bless your little heart.
Yeah, because I'm from the South. We know what bless your heart means, right? Bless your heart. But your shirt just, I wish I was wearing your shirt at that time because that was literally their opinion. Like they went so far as to tell us that women had too many rights. And the worst thing that happened was when they gave us the right to vote. Holy geez. So, but anyway, that was my little digression because of your shirt. But when we talk about the data, does it make sense about why it's useful, how you can use it, and in the different ways that you can use it in terms of setting up your campaigns, strategizing, manpower, funding, all of those different types of things? I see nodding of head. Yeah.
Singular head. Yeah, no, it's really, and I'm sorry, I think you said this for the beginning, and also apologies. This is the only time I can cram in lunch, so
You're good.
But are you able to share this with us after we're finished today?
So what's going to happen is you're going to get a copy, you're going to get a link to the video. You will get the PDF presentation. You will also get a link to the 2022 exit interview that I did, which I'll talk briefly about in just a second. You'll get a link to the entire top 2024 report, and then you'll get a link to the blog that I just wrote because it has a link to all of the recordings for every state that we've done a deep dive on and all of their presentations. So then you can take a look at the data like across and identify trends. That was one of the reasons why I wanted to see as much as I could and give it to you. Yes, Susan.
Okay, so I'm in Scott County, and so we struggle with raising funds, getting money, because we do know that we have a lot of inactive voters, and we tried a couple years ago. We tried mailing out postcards to all those, and we just got them all returned back in the mail because most of them were bad addresses to begin with, the ones that we did mail out.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess what's a good strategy then to get these inactive voters or back on the rolls? And
yeah, so I mean, there's two parts to it, right? So rural counties are harder because, you know, sometimes there's 4 miles in between a house, or depends upon where you are, right? So so a couple of ways to approach this. One of the things I tell people is go where people are already. So when you have festivals, when you have carnivals, when you have fairs, when you have, you know, different things like that where there are going to be large people there already, that's a great time to, you know, put on a shirt and ask them, hey, Matt, can I ask you just a question, just real quick? I'm not going to take up too much time. I know you want some cotton candy, girl, me too. But can I ask you just a question? And see, you laughed, but okay, so let me just say this. The reason I do that is because they chuckle when people laugh. They are not defensive, they are open, and you're going to have a conversation. When I was in like Southwest Atlanta at the old Nat Day, it's Old National, which is an inner city kind of part of Atlanta. And it was hot. When I tell y'all it was hot, it was hot. And real talk, I'm just being real, like I'm very transparent. Black women, heat and hair, not a great thing, right? So when I would be out there, people would automatically see the Stacey Abrams sign. They'd be like, "Girl, I'm already registered voter." I was like, "No, that's not what I'm asking you. That's all I want to know." And this is a tool that we use that I highly recommend everybody try to duplicate this, and you have time to do it. I said, "Well, all I want to know is, has anybody told you about our constituent services team?" And be like, "No, what's that?" Right? And I would say, and before I get to that, I would even say, "Girl, listen, I'm hot too. I'm not going to take up too much of your time. I just want to know one thing, right? Has somebody asked you, da 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 da?" And I'll even say, "Listen, I'm hot. Do you think I want to be out here doing this? I do not. But guess what? I don't want Governor Kemp as much more than I don't want to be out here, right?" So anyway, constituent services, what we did that I think was really brilliant. Hold on, I'm going to get to you, Candela, in just a second. So what we did was we had a little a form fill. You can do it on a Google form, or you can do it on your website, and it would be name, email address, and then from a drop-down box, have them pick their county, and then the boxes for them to select what they needed help with. So maybe it was emergency housing, maybe it was healthcare, maybe it was getting your veterans benefits, maybe it was, back then it was baby formula, right? And so we had all these check boxes. And what we had was, when people would fill that out, A, we got their email addresses, right? B, it showed that we cared, because I'm asking you, what can I help you with? People do not care how much you know until they know how much you care. Period. I say that all the time, and I live by that. People do not care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so then people would check the box, and our constituent services team, we would have somebody that would contact them. And we had a list of local resources in their county of the agencies that helped with those things. And so we were the conduit that connected them to help. So if I'm offering you help, I have earned the right to ask for your vote. I have earned the right to ask you why you're not voting, why you're not registered to vote. So when you say, what's the best strategy? A, go where people are already, so that you don't have to, you can reduce the amount of like door to door that you need to do. Second, you need to start now. You cannot wait until August to go talk to people. You will fail miserably, because they know you're only there for their vote, which means what? You don't really care. Right? That's what they would say. "Girl, we don't see y'all until fall." Right? And then the other thing is, find out what the biggest issues are in those counties. So I have a theory that says every issue comes back to one of four things: healthcare, housing, education, or economic security. One of those four things. So what I share with people is, find out one or two significant data points, talking points, statistics that are important to people in each of those areas, because I promise you, they're going to bring up one of those four things. And now you have something you can share with them that will benefit them, that will touch them, that will move them, right? I'll give you an example. Talking to this college girl, and I said, "Did you know that the state of Georgia has $400 million sitting in its housing assistance fund? And under Brian Kemp, they are declining 60% of the applicants." She was like, 400 million? I said, "Yeah, girl, 400 million. She was like, "I applied, got denied, and they got 400 million. Absolutely. Have you voted yet?" Right? 100%. Have you voted yet? So it's having just those few statistics. How much money is in your temporary assistance for needy families? Is that money being diverted other places instead of going to the people? Those are the kind of conversations you want to have with people, right? So I don't know about Iowa, but in Tennessee, where I'm at, they love to brag about how fiscally conservative they are and how fiscally responsible they are. So I was doing what I do on social media, talking to people, and I said, "Let me ask you a question." So let's just say that I have 3 children, and I have $50,000 just sitting in the bank, like it's just my rainy day fund. And DCS comes to my house because my children are going to school unkept, unbathed. They haven't been to a pediatrician. They're not being fed, right? And they're in raggedy tennis shoes. Is DCS going to say that I am fiscally responsible, or is DCS going to take my children? And they were like, take your kids. Right. So take the constituents away from these people because they do not deserve to have them. And that's a real life example that people can go, oh, I get that. Right? Am I being fiscally responsible? Or am I hoarding money while my children don't have health care? Am I hoarding money while my children are reading 3 grades below where they should be? Am I hoarding money? Right? So that's the thing. It's about taking, so this data is good for a couple of things. It tells you where to go to have the conversations. It tells you how to use the data to get funding to have the conversations. And then it's about taking that data and having just regular conversations. Talk to people like they are sitting on your couch, in your church, or at the bar. One of those 3 places is how you're going to have this conversation, because we connect in all of those areas, in all of those scenarios. And that's the way you're going to have the conversations, right? And it's not about proving to them that they are wrong. It's 100% not that. And for God's sake, don't tell people they're voting against their own interest. That makes them sound stupid, and nobody wants to sound stupid. Right? So, words that I use. So can I share with you something that astounded me about Scott County? Sure. It astounded me to know that 16% of the population like quit, just like we lost them. They just disengaged from voting in the last 2 years. Why do you think that is? I mean, I know I'm tired. I'm sure you're tired too, right? State the obvious. Call a thing out. Are you tired of hearing about Bidenomics? Me too. Are you tired of hearing Trump? Me too. You know what I say to people? Yes, Biden is old. Yes, 100%. He's old. Not my first choice. And he's working. It's effective. And we don't have anybody younger. So guess what? Right? So those are just some of the things. Like we talk about this in our networking call. How many of you guys come to the monthly networking call that I host? Anybody? You can raise your hand or put it in the chat. No? Oh, dear God. Okay, I know, Mark, that you do. Okay, so in the email that you get, you'll get an invitation to join. So what I love about the monthly networking call is we get to collaborate, and we have people, like at any given time, we'll have people from 10 to 15 different states on that call. And we get to talk about what's working and how do we frame things and how do we say things. And people go, holy crap, that's good. Wait, say that again. Let me repeat that, and it gives us a way to join together, because oftentimes organizing, especially in rural places, can feel very lonely. It can feel very alone. So what we have to do is understand that we are a huge percent of the country. There's a lot of us rural folks out there, and we're more powerful than we think we are. So many of you might live in a place that's like 60-40 in terms of voting, right? So I'm going to show you how to flip that when you're having a conversation with people, because they might say, there's no reason for me to vote. I'm a blue dot in a red sea. I hate that, by the way. I'm a blue dot in a red sea. Well, drowned, because you're probably not. It's just that the other blue dots around you are afraid that they're going to be thrown off of their PTA. They're not going to get to teach Bible school anymore. That's real talk, right? But so there's a quote. I have never talked about this on a call, and I don't know why I am now, but I always follow my gut. So y'all just ride with me for a second. I'm pulling it up. Okay. This is one of my favorite quotes. This is my second favorite quote ever. Okay. And it's by Marianne Williamson. And this is what it says. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, famous? Actually, who are you not to be? Right? You're a child of God. You're playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. But the very end, she says, when we let our own light shine, we unconsciously, and this is the part that is important, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. So in organizing, the more that you shine who you are and what you stand for, right? And it doesn't have to be attached to party, right? I said this to someone yesterday because they were like, the Democrats want to do, nah, 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 nah. I said, listen to me. I don't have a love for any particular party. What I do have a love for is humanity. What I do believe is that my mother and people like her have a right to Social Security that they worked and paid into. What I do believe is they have the right to Medicare and health care that they have worked so hard to earn. What I do believe is that my children have the right to good education, knowing factual history. What I do believe in, these are the things that I'm passionate about. And for me, whoever's policies align with those things, that's where I'm going. Now, if that just happens to be on the Democratic side of things, then that's just what it is, right? And this guy said, well, there's no legislature trying to take that away. And I said, dude, where are you living? Yes, there are people right now trying to end all of those things. So, but it's about, like, when you say things like that, who can fault you for being for humanity, for people? Am I not supposed to love people? Am I not supposed to want everyone to eat, for everyone to have health care? So I said all that to say, Susan, you asked me the best way to get inactive voters active again. You have to touch, move, and inspire them. And you have to do it in just a few minutes. So I look at organizing like dating. So don't judge me. If you've never been on an online dating app, you literally have to swipe right or swipe left, and there's only a little bit that you're going to judge it on, right? So the first 60 seconds of what you say to someone is going to make them swipe right or swipe left on you. They're either going to listen to what you say or they're not. And then it's going to turn into like a timeshare presentation, right? Where they say it's only going to be an hour and a half and you're there for 8 hours, right? So it's, hey, I only want 3 minutes of your time. And then they're going to talk to you for 13. Because you're going to have 2 or 3 talking points from the relevant issues for them. And then you're going to back it up with data that proves what you're saying. And now they're going to want to take themselves to the polls. Does that make sense? So Candela, you said if you're not in one of the counties listed, should you say you want to focus on your county or try to get involved with the closest county? Not a question that I can answer because you got to kind of go where you think, but let me ask you this. What county are you in? Because
I'm in
remember,
Mills County. Yeah.
say it again, love.
I'm in Mills County. It's south of Council Bluffs.
All right, so give me a second.
So it's the other side of the state.
Okay. This is me literally looking up your stuff while you're on here.
Hey, cool.
Well, because for me, like it's a legitimate question, right? So what should you do? What should you not do? Do you know what district you're in?
I'm in CD4.
Okay.
I'm in State Senate 8, and I'm in House Senate or House of Representatives for state in 16.
Yeah.
And we didn't even have anyone on our ballot to vote against. Like it was the Republican or write-in somebody.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah,
that's the way it is here where I live. Like literally, I'm looking at your numbers and girl, like where I am, it's like 80-20, 85-15. So you're looking like your House votes were 70-30, right?
Right.
Like that's where you are. And when I look at, what did I just click? Oh, I clicked your thing. So here's the thing. This is, if it were me making this choice, I would get active somewhere that is going to have an impact for 2024. And then in the off cycle, I would be organizing my ass off in my community. I would come back to my county in that, because your county is pretty much going to stay the way it is. You're not going to flip it. when it comes for 2024, but we need as much progress in 2024 as we can. So I would say find somewhere to get tapped into in one of the places where you can make the most impact, so that we can, you know, make progress in those areas. And then in the off cycle, do issue campaigns where you are. So like, what would you say are your greatest issues that people are concerned about in Mills?
So right now I'm really heavily focused on school board stuff, and childcare is an issue. And when you said the four, I mean, housing, healthcare, you didn't say childcare, but childcare goes in both education and economic.
Yeah,
And
it goes in
so,
healthcare too.
yeah. And so
Yeah.
housing, healthcare, childcare, economic issues, and education are all concerns for my county.
100%. And so what you want to look is in those four pillars, what are the ones that people that are the most concerned about? And how do you build an issue campaign in the off cycle that garners support, that brings the community together, that you can then shift into a political issue when it comes to the next election cycle, right? So even if that's your local school boards, right? Whenever your next election, let's say your next school board election is in 2025.
It's
Or
it's Tuesday. Our next school
Oh,
board
good
election
God,
is
girl.
Tuesday. So that's what I'm
Well,
working on right now. Yeah.
okay, so when's the next one going to be after that?
25.
Yeah. So on the off cycle, then so you have so what I would do is I would devote 70% of my time to what's going to impact 2024, and I would give the other 30% or 40%, right, to building issues to lead up to based on whatever the results are that's coming up Tuesday. And I would be building in 2024 locally, and then I would be contributing to 2024. I would tap into and just pick a county, pick an organization, pick a something so that you're not so overwhelmed. But I would divide my time between where I'm at, because where you're at matters, and you can still move the needle where you are. But that's the goal, is to be building issue campaigns in the off cycle that you can shift into political campaigns and candidates during the actual election cycle.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments or anything? No? Y'all are quiet. Okay, so can I share with you all, since some of you guys asked me about the networking call? First, let me get you the link to where you can register for it. The next one is going to be November 30th, because we have Thanksgiving the week before that. And this is going to be the link for that. And I'll give you an idea of what kind of happens on those calls. So like last week, the call was on, we took up the subject of healthcare. And that's the link to register for the networking call. And I created a resource for that and for everybody. And so I'll share them with you. Give me 1 second. This is the recording for it. So you can actually like listen to the recording and be like, okay, do I want to join this and check out what's up or not, right? So that's that. And then I did a resource. So what's the goal? The goal is to empower people on how to frame things and have conversations. So for example, under healthcare, we took a look at abortion bans, right? And the impact of them. We took a look at Medicaid expansion, and then we took a look at rural hospital closures. Okay. That last link is the link to the resource. So how many of you guys have difficulty talking about abortion in your communities or getting people to listen? Yeah. I see some nods. I see some, I don't know. Right. Okay. So there's lots of ways to frame this conversation. One of the ways that I find really, really effective is there's two ways to go about this. You can talk to people about why they believe what they believe, right? Which I'll help with that in a second. And the other one is I frame it with your morality is actually hurting the people you love. What do I mean by that? I mean that rural communities already have a difficult time recruiting physicians, especially specialists, right? What we're seeing happening in states where we have restrictive abortion laws, We see OBGYNs leaving the state. We see OBGYNs refusing to come to the state. We see schools in those states having lower enrollment for medical school OBGYN specialties, right? So the people that do want to have babies, so the people that do want to carry to term are not going to have the physicians that they need to actually do that. So you are putting babies at risk. You're putting moms at risk, right? And it's just that thing, right? So do you want to actually do harm to the people that want to have babies? Because that's what's happening. And it's a fact, right? Rural communities are almost always maternal vulnerability desert and maternal vulnerability places where it's much, much higher. Most of the time we're maternal deserts, right? Where we don't have OBGYNs, period. So like at the end of that resource, there's a link for all of the stuff that I gave you. And if I click on the very first one, the March of Dimes link, and I go to Iowa, right? Iowa's grade, according to the March of Dimes, is a C. That's your preterm birth rate. That's your grade. And so it goes through all of your other statistics. So the percentage of babies that are born preterm is increasing in Iowa, right? It was in 2015, 9%, and now it's 10%, and it's been steadily climbing, okay? Your infant mortality rate is going down. Fantastic. We want to see that. But if you go all the way down to the bottom and you see the purple where you're at, so like Wapello, Appanoose, Wayne, Decatur, those areas, Mahaski, Monroe, Lucas, Clark, Jasper, Tama, Franklin, Floyd, Emmett, Buena Vista, Webster, Crawford, Woodbury, all of those places, Des Moines, Louisa, and Scott. All of those areas have higher rates of maternal vulnerability. So when you can have those conversations with people, what if you just say that to people? So if you're in Scott County, you can talk to people about that. If you're in Des Moines, you can talk about that. Right? So it's knowing those types of information. So you guys have already done Medicaid expansion. That's one of the things that helps you. You don't have a midwifery policy. So you guys have do you know that you have a recent action to extend coverage for women beyond 60 days postpartum? Did you know that? Because right now it only goes to 60 days. So there's just a lot of stuff in there. But it's good stuff for you to be able to have conversations. So find out the issues, use the data, pick 2 facts or 2 statistics from each of those 4 pillars: education, housing, healthcare, and then use those to be able to have those conversations with people. So I'm going to go back real quick to the end of this. Maybe. Oh, there it is. So when you get, where did it go? It says it's paused. Where did it go? It went away from me. I clicked share and it said paused. Okay, well, don't share then. But I really would like for you to share. So let's try it again. I'm going to click share one more time before we hop off here. Okay, so let me show you. So when you get to the end of this, the voting data that I shared with you guys, it's here, right? So this is your loss of voting data, and this is 2020, 2022, and the percentages. Your voter registration decline, this is the first bucket is your Dems, this is your Republicans, and these are your others. So this is really important. At the very end, I didn't cover this yet, but these are your inactive registered voters broken down by party as well. So you have the ability, I don't know why my little thingy went crazy, but I'll fix it before I send it to y'all. It's probably when I was clicking stuff, but anyway, but this will just show you. So you guys had a loss of Dem voters, 132%, right? 111% for Republicans, and then 156% for other voters. Crazy. So you're going to want to take this data, and then this is everything that's going to be included. You're going to have the recording of the deep dive, the PDF of today's presentation, the link to the actual thing. You're actually going to also get a link to Rural County's blog. And that'll have everything, and then you'll get the invitation to collaborate and join the monthly call. I am working on this. This county is without Democratic Party representation. I may or may not get it done before I send it out. If I don't, you will get it forthcoming. Because I have 4 of these presentations to do today. So I would love to know if you all thought this was worth coming to. Was it beneficial? Any of that good stuff? Yeah, cool. I might send you a little survey afterwards. The more feedback that you give me and the things that you need to know and want to know, the more helpful I can be. You're welcome, Veronica. Like, call me crazy, but I really think that we will show up. I think that we will show up. I think that we will make it through, and we have to stay hopeful about that, right? We just have to. And then we got to hope and do the work. Hope and do the work. So yes, Kathy. There's what? Kathy? Oh, did you not mean to raise your hand? Maybe not. I'm going to throw my email in the chat for anyone that wants to connect, because here's the other thing. A lot of people will say, I would love to do like a one-on-one, or I can get together a group of organizers and would love to do like a training on messaging or framing or whatever. If you're interested in any of that stuff, shoot me an email. We will get it scheduled and get on the calendar so that we're able to be very, very effective in 2024. Cool. All right. I appreciate you all very much for coming, joining, participating. You're very, very welcome. And hopefully I will see you on November 30th. Okay.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you,
welcome. Bye,
Danny. Very
guys.
good.
Thanks,
Thank you.
guys.